opening the meeting of November 8th of the Natural Resource Committee of Oregon City. I'll call it to order. We're going to go ahead and have a discussion of the agenda analysis. We've got interviews. There are three of us who are termed out. I think the only applications are the three of us that are being turned out.
That's right, yeah.
But I think we have to go through somewhat of a formal process because it's required in our bylaws, and I think probably even the charter of the city.
All boards and city commissions and applications, the process is now much more formal. So it's an open application process, and committee members who are terming out have to reapply, just the same as any new member applicant would. The process is that the committee would hold an interview, and that's what we're planning to have this evening. It has to be a public interview. It has to be recorded live on TV, on our website. And then the deliberations can be made tonight by the group as well. And then the mayor can participate in the interview process if they want to, but in some cases they just rely on the committee's recommendation. And then the mayor would formalize the appointment at a subsequent city commission meeting based on your recommendation. Since these are all reapplications for appointment, I did not provide you a set of questions to follow. I figured you might want to just make this a little more informal discussion with each of the applicants. And then if you're an applicant, we would just have you come and sit in front of the dais and then have a discussion with the NRC. So that's
what I'm going to recommend. Apparently we have a person that wants to speak to us, and we also have a person for public comment. We also have Martin Montalvo here. It's a new business discussion. I'm going to suggest that I'm going to get some feedback from you all in terms of when you want to do the interviews. I would suggest getting at least the new business ahead of the interviews, so Martin can go home or back to his office or whatever he's going to do for the remainder of the interview, and have our public comments. Is there any? Are you going to have public? You're going to speak to us? Is there anybody else that plans to speak to us? Okay, so I'm going to suggest that we go ahead and substitute new business after public comments, and then we can make a decision of what we want to do with the interviews at that point. If that's okay with everybody?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
All right. With that, I open the meeting. I think we'll go ahead through a roll call, starting to my extreme left.
Matt Cole, present.
Trent Warnes, present.
Doug Nanny here.
Dorothy Dalsford here.
Jerry Herman here.
Very good.
Pete Walter staff, Nancy Brochot and Bill Clark were both sick and let us know ahead of time. So, yeah.
So we'll go ahead and open up with public comments and invite you to come forward and speak to the mic, if you would. We have you people identify themselves.
I'm Nancy Eichstead. I'm with the Friends of Gladstone Nature Park, and I had a conversation with Jerry last week, and he suggested that I stop by and just kind of check in with you folks. The Gladstone Nature Park is owned by the city, but the city doesn't really have the resources to take care of it. So a group of us, neighbors and concerned citizens, sort of started a 501c3 to supplement what the city can do for us. There's a really limited parks budget in Gladstone, and most of the money gets sucked into Meldrum Bar. They have cottonwood trees that are falling on vehicles down there, which we don't like to see. So a lot of what they do, it goes to that park. So we've got about 100 people in our mailing list, and we have cleanup and Ivy Day and work efforts the last Saturday of every month from 9 to noon. And just wanted to let you know about that. I have business cards for contact information here.
Yeah, I'll be happy to pass those out. Thank you.
Thank you. And We sponsor an Arbor Day every year in April, the last Saturday of April. And recently, we've taken on a new project. You can sponsor a tree in the nature park. And you might ask yourselves, you know, it's a park, it already has trees. Why do we need more trees? Well, as you might well know, they're not always in the place that you need them to be. So we're gonna put some trees along the northern edge of the park where some development has occurred that is sort of encroaching into the park visually. So people can sponsor a tree or name a tree after a loved one or anything like that. So do you guys have any questions? Have you heard of the park before?
Other than Jerry actually having called me up and indicating that you'd be hearing. No.
Well, it's 11 and a half acres. It's on the original Caisson land claim. It's known as the Oberson property, and the city acquired it to prevent it from being developed, which is happening all the way around us. Different land use fights going on over pieces of property, and we're trying to keep it as natural as possible. We've put in about a mile of trails.
Right.
And the neighbors now are using the property like never before, walking their dogs and stuff. It's created more visibility and it's gotten more use, so we have less of a problem with transients and tweakers and folks camping out up there that we used to have. So,
And the Caissons and Harvey Cross were the original founders of Gladstone.
that's
weren't they?
right,
Like,
yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
And Harvey Cross lived on 12th Street, I believe, in Oregon City.
My house?
Well, somewhere around there. I don't know.
In my former house.
They came from the Molalla River in Canby originally, but they couldn't stand the flooding and they had it. So they came to Oregon City a little higher ground. Then they bought all the land up in Gladstone.
Yeah, I think there's some good connections between Oregon
Yeah.
City and Gladstone and our Chautauqua and that whole thing, Harvey Cross. And, what's her name? Eva Emery died, thank you. We're from Oregon City, but they started the Chautauqua and Gladstone, so.
Nancy asked me if there's some way we could figure out some walking tours, and I said, well, we've tested a bunch of walking tours here. I did it with Dee Dee and anybody else from NRC that would help, and hopefully we can establish those again, but they worked all real well, and that site she's talking about is a very rich history site, overlooks Chautauqua, it's 200 acres, and all the bottom land below you, natural lakes, it's a pressure ridge of basalt, it's very unusual site.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's got some really unique geography, great big boulders, and whenever we're up there, you know, chopping on the blackberries that have overtaken it, sometimes we'll find a big pile of rocks that we didn't know was there. So it's got some really neat features. So come on up. It spans Webster and Oakfield Road behind Kearns Market. So if you know that intersection, you're very near the park already.
she was also interested in what a natural resource committee is. I said, well, come look at one. And maybe you can stay for a meeting if you'd like to see what we do. Because I think Gladstone, with the changes you're undertaking there, you and others are undertaking, would be ripe for maybe that type of element to come forth. I think
Yeah.
the city might be open to it.
We're always looking for resources,
Yeah.
whatever we can get, people to pull ivy even.
We have parks also that are natural areas that have the same kind of problems you do, and we have.
Well, I'm kind of wondering if maybe Oregon City Parks Foundation
That's what I was gonna-
did two of us to help each other in our efforts
That'd be
and
great.
brainstorm on a lot of and fundraisings
I'd love to talk to you
and
about that.
volunteers. So
Yeah.
I grabbed two of your cards.
Okay, great, send me a note.
Yeah, and I'd like a copy of what you're doing about naming your trees. That we should adopt something like this for our
These are
Natural
really
Resources Committee.
Yeah.
Sell bragging rights. I'm all about selling bragging rights.
Thanks very much.
She also called me because she was reading all the press about ivy poles, and she said, what are ice age monsters to be featured? I said, come and see. We talked about the natural history of Waterford Park
That
on
was-
the last ivy pole.
That was quite a piece of writing in the paper. The monster beavers and,
Yeah,
yeah,
there you go.
very impressive.
Pete, I'm going to suggest if you would, if you could go ahead and just email her with a email, our copied emails, so you have the copy, our email addresses.
Okay.
So when you're having a given event, then you've got us in your library of emails.
That'd be great, thank you.
Also perhaps include our Parks Director, Phil Lewis,
Yep.
in that piece. And you might want to visit you might want to speak to the Parks and Recreation Committee too.
Yeah, we have a Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee that meets
Fourth Thursday.
fourth Thursday. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you.
coming. Thank you for coming, Nancy.
Thank you.
Can't get rid of me now.
So we'll go directly into new business and invite Martin Montalvo to come up and bring anybody else he might want to bring up.
Good bite.
Public speaking is good for everyone. Good afternoon or evening, I should say. Martin Montalvo, Operations Manager, Oregon City Public Works. With me this evening is,
I'm Wes Wilson. I work with Martin. I'm Utility Maintenance Specialist number 3. I do a lot of the vegetation within the city.
so Wes is our lead for any arboreal work that we need to have done. He also manages our vegetation maintenance contracts with our various vendors. So about a month ago, there's a very large 36-inch DBH white oak out by the Mount Pleasant Elementary on Lynn Avenue that came down in the middle of the evening. Wes was one of the lead responders on that. It took us quite a while to take that tree down and try and alleviate the problem on the road. Made us aware of the conditions of those the 2 other trees in that 3-tree set along Lynn Avenue. And Wes and the supervisors made a decision to have a certified arborist, 2 separate certified arborists go out and examine these 2 trees and make a determination as to what the final recommendation would be for them. The concern being that they fall down and either cause additional property damage to the adjacent apartment complex, to the school, or Lord forbid, harm someone traveling on the road. We've submitted for you guys this evening the 2 separate independent arboreal reports, both of which indicate that these trees have a very high likelihood of failure. The trees are compromised health-wise, and then it's not a matter of if the trees will fail, it's when the trees will fail. As part of the tree mitigation code, we're required to submit a request to planning to get a permit. The trees are deemed by a certified arborist to be a hazard. Then we can remove them and just do a 1-for-1 mitigation. There is no requirement to come to NRC, but I didn't want to take these trees down based on their size and significance without having at least some public forum and allowing people to know as to why we're doing this. So our recommendation was to come before you guys and make you aware it's not something that we necessarily are eager to do, but it's something that in the interests of public safety, it's something that we're recommending and intending to do. Wanted to give you guys an opportunity to ask us any questions. The report's been provided for you. You have 2 separate reports, one of which was extremely, probably the most comprehensive report we've seen, including samples being sent off to State University for analysis, and some pretty impressive photos of what's going on with those 2 trees. With that, we're happy to answer any questions. So just for clarity and openness, Karen has spoken to me about possibly coming to speak to her homeowners association next Thursday. Based on all of the other items that we have coming, including winter, which winter is coming, we need to move on removing these 2 trees sooner rather than later. We actually have a contract in place that as soon as I have the permit, we intend to have 1 of the 2 trees removed next Monday. The critical issue pushing it is there's a fire hydrant directly adjacent to it in the parking strip.
Right.
And as soon as the tree comes out, I have to get that fire hydrant relocated for the safety of anybody coming through there and not striking the fire hydrant that was previously protected by these trees. So I've got a lot of other things pressing on the back end of that with other construction projects. So we're trying to get it taken care of as early as possible. Just to anecdotally, Wes got a text message from one of the arborists, the an independent arborist sent a text message at 12:30 in the evening a few weeks ago in the middle of one of the windstorms saying, I'm just letting you know, these trees are very likely to come down and you guys need to move on it. So he's eager to get them down,
Yeah.
based on what I've seen. I'm eager to get them down. We don't want this to expand and become an incident. With that, I'll take any questions you might have, and Wes is always open to questions.
Do you have any idea of the age of those old oaks?
I don't. I've got the DBH on them. So one's 37 inches DBH and the other one's 36 inches DBH. In terms of age, there wasn't anything in the report that indicated the age.
And the fact they were growing out of the street always was of interest to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there was
First
obviously
year,
there was
I
an
always
effort to protect them, which was nice, but
Yeah.
I don't know if that results in the best growing conditions for the
Yeah,
tree.
I
once
think
you've
the
done
effort to
something like
protect
that.
them probably compromised them to some
Yeah.
extent. They became root bound and
Yeah.
Go ahead. From a code regulation standpoint, the city code section that governs tree removal in the public right-of-way is chapter 12.08. And if a arborist report determines that a tree is dead, diseased, dying, or hazardous, it can be removed with approval of the city, provided it is replaced at a 1-to-1 ratio. So there's still a question as where is the most suitable place to replace the tree? The arborist report does not recommend replacing the tree in the same
At that
location.
location, no, I wouldn't think so.
So with that, with our submittal that we given to P, the tree that we'll be taking down on Monday is actually, the adjacent property owner is the police department. And the recommendation we'll be providing is that the trees be mitigated in the final development plan for that facility. And the code calls for a 1-to-1, but we're gonna be telling our counterparts at the police department they need to be a little bit more generous than the 1-to-1. The second tree is actually adjacent to a private property. It's an apartment complex. And I can't make conditions for them as to what they should be doing well above and beyond what the code requirement is. We have helped them out because of the proximity to the road by getting the arborist report for them, and we'll assist them with obtaining the permit, but they will be paying for and contracting for the removal of that tree independently. The taxpayers won't be paying for that.
Are you gonna give any consideration for the mitigation to actually plant oaks again?
That's something that when they come up with the landscaping plan as to what will be mitigated. The code doesn't speak, when it speaks type to type, I don't believe it says it's, species to species, it's just 1-to-1 and,
It's really a question of how much planting area do you have? And we do have a list of trees that is more suitable for extremely large planter strips if they're available. And I believe that, there's a lot of design work left to be done as far as the police station goes.
but the planter
So,
strips,
yeah.
the planter strip trees, or the street trees that they'll have to put out, that'll be part of their development requirement.
Right.
The tree that will have to be mitigated for will be independent
Right.
of the planter strip requirement. So they will have to find somewhere on the property itself, space to mitigate for that tree.
Yeah.
Does not our code allow the mitigation offsite if,
It can.
be beneficial?
It can allow fee in lieu or off-site replanting as well. And I know the desire is to do a good job with the mitigation for these trees. We don't have a current design for how the street frontage is going to look in front of the new public safety facility. Currently, there's a curb-tight sidewalk there, and that is going to change, but we don't know how it's going to change when the new fire station comes forward with a design. So,
But at least if they
yeah.
know up front, you have a mitigation requirement that needs to be met. It's
Yeah.
something that can be accommodated within the design.
Yeah.
the college is recipient of probably 100 trees that were intended, 200 up at the senior high school for some work that's been done up there for what? For the new bus facility, bus barn, all that. And the district made a established a relationship with the college, I think with you guys' approval, to take probably 100 of those trees and put them on campus, Plaquemines Community College, which is really important. They're big trees too. And I witnessed during this big water event about 3 weeks ago, a month ago, huge amount of water. And they couldn't let any water into the LC, and everything that I wanted to see happened. They stopped all the water from going down the ditch because they couldn't let anything disturb anything during the in-water work period that they're at. And so it backed up on the college grounds, and it made this beautiful lake in the athletic fields, which is what we had wanted to do there too. And now they're talking about maybe establishing an Oregon white ash swale there or something. I mean, maybe it doesn't have to be one-to-one species by species, but I'm just wondering if this could be a nucleus. If it's too difficult to do for you guys there, maybe it'd be possible to be a partnership in that whole thing.
Right now, as far as I know, that they won't have a problem mitigating for the trees on that property
Okay.
site. Plus, it keeps it within our purview of responsibility. One of the things with the mitigation is we're responsible for the maintenance, and I've never been a big fan of delegating that over to somebody else. I'm not a big fan of fee and lieu either. I'd rather just mitigate, be responsible for it, than walk away.
I was concerned, and you actually told me, but that you're going to salvage the wood because it's such a beautiful stand of oak. I hate to see it just be
So it's
chucked
not-
up.
not- It's going to be, there is a taker that's going to be taking the wood. He uses them for some artisanal purposes, but it's already worked into the disposal contract. So we've been asked in the past to store several other trees that have come down, and I can tell you there is no room in the inn. Okay, I have the remnants of 2 other trees at limited facilities that we have, and if a reuse for those isn't found soon, I will find a reuse for it. Because it impedes our operations storing wood for a long period of time.
Makes sense.
If a round could be appropriated from the biggest tree, I don't know what the biggest tree is, it's got to be more than, I'd say, 200 years old. This is the 175th anniversary of Oregon Trail coming up this year. And we're doing a lot of work at the end of Oregon Trail, looking for exhibit opportunities. And if I was thinking about this, trying to get a hold of a large tree section and using it along the trail. There's an 800-foot trail that Pete knows
like a
about. We'd have to
6-inch
talk to
round?
Pete. Pardon?
Are you thinking about a 6-inch round or something?
I'm talking about probably 2 feet deep, round out of it,
Okay.
or something like that. That could be. I'd be willing to
I'll
talk to
see
you
what we can do with the
Yeah.
contractor. It's
because you could plot the wagon train of 18 whatever, and the next one 18 whatever. It's the 175th anniversary, and if it was a bigger tree
I'll
than
see
that,
if
I
there's
might.
something that we can do to
Yeah,
accommodate
sure.
that. It might be
Thank you.
something that the police department can work into an art
Yeah.
piece or some sort of commemorative piece in the final facility. Okay.
We'd have to run it by Pete because he's helping us approve all those things. And the heliport, we dropped the heliport idea. I want you to know that. Gail Yaslina said no heliport.
What did that have to do with 170?
Nothing.
Disregard the heliport remark.
I appreciate,
Thanks
Any
for
other
taking the
questions,
time.
comments?
anything you wanted to say?
No, I'm happy with everything.
So
Mark.
Wes will be coming and doing these in the future for you, so I don't have to come. So, all right, thank you for your
Yes,
time.
thank you for
Appreciate
letting
all
us
your
know.
help.
Coming out and telling us.
Good luck.
Yeah.
And Karen, you got a signed thing here too.
No, that's okay. Turns out I don't need to say anything.
Was it said by somebody else?
I signed it, but I don't need to say anything. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing the idea to us.
I will leave you in Karen's
Yeah.
hands.
Yeah, Mark took care of it.
You realize then the information you provided here for us will not go into the public record?
That's okay.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Mr. Chairman, I just think this is really good that this is happening, and
Yes.
Pete too, that, people are coming and asking us for
Yeah,
input.
it was
It means they're having an impact.
Martin was working on the.
Sorry?
Sorry, I was explaining you've been out of town doing your work with the hurricane mitigation down south and for 2 months. So the day he got back or shortly thereafter, he contacted me about that.
I don't know how many people know that he's in charge of operations, but his field of study was as a wetland biologist.
Yes.
Oh,
Right. And he worked on mitigating with the United States Coast Guard. He just told me 3 hurricanes, that's where he's been, dealing with hurricane response. Wow. We think we have problems. Yeah. Very
Thanks,
nice they
Mark.
did this.
Okay, very good. You want to hold off the interviews until the end, just go through our regular agenda, folks?
That's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, let's go ahead then. We'll go back then to old business and then back to our heritage tree and
Okay.
ordinance.
All right, so for item 4A, which is continuing discussion of incentives for the Heritage Tree Program, I updated a prior staff report with some new information, and thanks to you all and to Kelly Reed, who was staff liaison at the last meeting, for bringing me some good notes about your ideas in this regard. So let me just get to that section. Where am I? Okay. So the NRC had drafted amendments to our Heritage Tree Code back in June and through October 2014. And then the Planning Commission reviewed those and recommended approval of those revisions, which were ultimately adopted by the City Commission March 18th, 2016, with the passage of Ordinance 16-1002. And the whole point of the ordinance is to try to improve recognition of cities' heritage trees, which are any large tree that contributes to the heritage of Oregon City. And there's a set of criteria for that, and there's also a set of fairly detailed procedures now that you're all fairly familiar with. And one of those items is a requirement that as part of the selection of a heritage tree, that a property owner consenting to a nomination provide a certified arborist forestry or ecology report to document that the tree is not irreparably damaged, diseased, hazardous, or unsafe. Or if so, then the applicant be willing to have the trees treated in order to alleviate any danger or hazard. So the reasons why that was put into the code initially was partly because of public safety, partly to understand the expected longevity of a tree or the presence of any weak limbs or hazardous conditions, and also to provide an impartial assessment of a tree prior to the decision to, assign permanent legal protection to it. So that does represent a bit of a cost barrier for some people who might otherwise want to nominate a tree. At the same time, from a practical standpoint, if a tree is in a hazardous condition and might be expected to fail in the future, then it's good to know whether that's going to happen. So in terms of improving participation in the Heritage Tree Program, there's been some discussion about how to fund these reports or change the requirement for the report. So some of the things we were discussed was, could there be a set aside from the Metro Enhancement Grant Funding Program annually? And are there any restrictions on that funding from Metro? I don't believe that Metro would have any restrictions on it, but there would probably be some city grant committee consideration of that, just like there would with any other grant application through the Metro Enhancement Program. In terms of other grant programs that are available through the Nature in the Neighborhoods program, that's an ongoing yearly round of applications that people could do. And it is concerned principally with habitat improvement and that sort of thing. So, second item, could the code requirements be changed from a certified arborist to just be a simple checklist, making it cheaper for applicants to get it reviewed? I think that's something that we can explore. One idea that I thought about we could put on our work plan potentially is that first we do a survey of owners to engage property owners directly to raise awareness about the program and to ask property owners what aspects of the program could be improved that might increase the number of nominations. We could design a set of questions that would be quickly, fairly quickly get to the idea of what is working and what isn't. And then we'd implement that through the city website, like a survey. And then the NRC could provide input on the type of questions we want to ask. We've also contacted Rodney Walters, who is Clackamas Community College arboriculture instructor. We invited him to tonight's meeting, but he has actually a class he's teaching tonight. So he could come to a next meeting on December 13th.
Good.
If we have a meeting. And he's got some good input on how his program could dovetail into this. And so he's very interested in the program and what his students could do to work something in. And then he did emphasize on the phone to me that if these trees are growing on public property, then it would be much easier for the students to be involved because they're not supposed to be working in the capacity of a private consulting firm on private property.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So Mountain View Cemetery or City Park or other things like that. The other idea that came up was we do already require tree covenants and arborist reports with new development. So replanted and preserved trees that are in subdivisions or on new site plans have a requirement to record a restrictive covenant. So we don't have these fully mapped. We just have legal documentation of where they are occurred since we have put this requirement in our code back in 2008. So maybe the owners would be more willing to designate the trees as heritage trees if they're already protected by a covenant. And then there's some public outreach that's going to be required in order to do that. In some cases, property owners aren't even going to know they have a covenant on their tree unless they look through their title work. So there's kind of a public awareness aspect to it that has a benefit as well. So those are some of the ideas we have come up with so far.
In terms of the covenants, so I might just interrupt you a moment. I presume that having those covenants on trees that were preserved probably doesn't date back to the time of the heritage trees. That is,
No,
they're much more recent.
Much smaller trees.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
Unless the tree that has a covenant on it is one that was actually
There.
voluntarily preserved. The case in point, for example, being with Clackamas Community College's new Industrial Technology Center has about 23 very large trees in the parking lot that their arborist has recommended be preserved as part of the new landscaped parking lot. And there is a requirement for those to be protected by covenant. Since they haven't got a final certificate of occupancy on that building yet, we'll be instituting that requirement prior to occupancy on the building. So, yeah, there's opportunity there. Does it provide additional, I guess the question I would ask is, does that additional covenant provide protection above and beyond what is already legally required? And the difference being that in the case of a heritage tree, the city commission is actually involved in the decision as to whether a tree is removed or not in the future because there's a stated public benefit to that tree. It's not just a private covenant. Yeah, it's a public covenant.
What I'm going to suggest, one thing to suggest to you, Pete, is that, the planning department can give grants to renovation of old houses up to $1,000, I believe.
Oh, right.
And those monies, I think, originated from back in the day when there was a community block grant to give loans to people to work on their houses, very low interest loans. And those monies got paid back to the county, but they still had to be used for basically the original intent. And I think that's the source of the funding. But what I was saying is, you've got some experience of having funding to do these kinds of things in terms of the the housing that are on the local or national
through the
inventory.
Historic Review Board.
And so you've got some experience there.
Yeah.
And it might be, should we go to the Metro Enhancement Grants to get money, there might be a mechanism within your own department in terms of allocating those monies into the system. So it might be worth pursuing how that might work.
Okay. Yeah. There's probably a number of potential sources that we would want to look at in that regard. And then, because the Historic Review Board grant program allows for renovation of existing historic features on a home up to a certain amount to offset the cost of window replacement on historic windows or porch replacement or roof replacement to keep the structure and integrity of a historic home. That's a very good idea. So,
On those historical homes, are the trees on the property in the covenant? Okay. Just checking.
I'm not meaning to nip that question in the bud, but it does come up from time to time as are landscape features on these historically designated properties within the purview of the Historic Review Board. And the Historic Review Board is principally looking at architecture and the overall site of the, but sometimes a tree is called out as a specific feature on a specific inventory. And if that is the case, then we would probably want the HRB to weigh in on that because it's part of the landmark, but not in every case. It has to be basically identified as a feature on the Historic Review inventory of that site. And when you look at that inventory form, it will say landscape features, and there'll either be a check mark next to it or there won't be. And if there is a check mark, and there hopefully is some additional description that identifies what it was when the inventory was done that was unique and from a landscape perspective.
Right, I was just thinking maybe that's how the Hackett House had its covenant on the tree. That's my thought on that.
I didn't know there was a covenant on that, but is there? Maybe.
Well,
The house
when I'd
has
asked about, isn't it the Hackett House that has the hotel coming around it? And I said,
Yes.
we should make that a heritage tree. And
Whole assemblage of trees around it, but
Right.
they're
Yeah.
gonna preserve them anyway.
But
so-
well, they're gonna preserve the one.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then,
They're gonna preserve
I think
them all.
it said that there was that covenant on that tree already, and I said, well, we should put a heritage tree plaque on it anyway.
Yeah.
As a good citizen thing.
Right.
But, so
Okay.
that's what drew that question. Thinking that maybe how do we know which trees have a covenant on them?
Okay.
And maybe we,
Well, it sounds like you thought this through
Yeah.
from your staff standpoint. Are you asking for some help to come up with a way
Well,
to evaluate options, or?
No, I'm glad that Doug reminded me about that idea because it was something that we'd need to pursue in further detail.
Yeah.
We have tree mitigation funds that we use for replanting citywide. Currently, those are for planting trees as opposed to other services that are tree related, and it would really be I think it needs to be a public discussion at the Planning Commission and City Commission level as well as to whether those tree mitigation funds be used for anything other than planting. But realistically, that's a potential option as well. Since, and in addition to that, then, a rotating Metro enhancement grant. I don't know enough about that program to comment if it would be a permanent thing or not. So we should explore that in more detail.
And how would this relate to Heritage Groves?
Well, I
It's part
think,
of our ordinance.
Having up to, whatever, 5,000, I think is what is in the Historic Review Board fund annually that somebody can apply for. And then you potentially, as the NRC, could make recommendations as to whether an application was worthwhile and worth funding.
I don't think, if you've got a grove, you're probably not going to look at the individual trees in terms of health and so forth. You're
Right.
probably, it's going to have some other way of looking at
Well,
the,
and it does include those provisions of
Yeah.
wildlife and other historical character and whatever.
Yeah, and I know when Phil Lewis was here, he talked about the average cost of a tree report could range from, a couple $100s to up to $1,000.
Yeah.
And so, if we offset the cost of that by 50%, that's potentially a good incentive.
This might be off topic, but
Yeah.
the Wheeler development, were you on the Wheeler Farm development that's going on? It looks to me like they're making a park with those, I think there's 7 old
No, I
growth fir
wasn't the
trees that they're
reviewer
gonna
on that.
preserve there.
Okay. Yeah, they have some slopey areas and that sort of thing, and some tracts and that sort of thing, but no, I wasn't the reviewer
Okay,
on that.
I was just reading the
Yeah.
article and they were saying that they're gonna, acre and a third was donated for a park.
Oh.
And it sounded to me like those firs were in that they were saving those firs.
Yeah,
If they
I
have
don't know.
If the developer has to do an arborist report, maybe we can make a grove.
sure. I don't think that's fully platted yet, so,
But it's just,
Yeah.
that would also,
Yeah.
from a PR standpoint of view,
yep.
that would be a good thing to shine a light on NRC with too. Cooperating with keeping green spaces and new developments. And that's what, we want.
Yeah.
And hallelujah, they saved those firs.
Right. They have some power line easements as well, that constrain.
no furs in the
development.
power line easements.
I don't know if the firs are in the power line easement. That's a question I would guess I would have. And then
The
PGE,
power company doesn't like
power
trees.
companies don't like those.
As long as they're below 20 feet or below that.
Right.
Maybe they'll
Okay.
pay us not to plant trees there.
So the other
Put it
thing,
towards our NRC budget.
the other thing I wanted to point out about our program is that it is a voluntary program, but with the unique difference that any private citizen may nominate trees on city-owned property with city commission approval and a recommendation from the NRC. Once trees are approved for inclusion, they receive legal protection through a deed restriction. That means that the tree is protected even if the property is sold in the future. There's a civil fine of $600 for any tree that's removed or damaged. And this legally binding covenant protects the tree, but it does potentially serve as a disincentive for somebody who doesn't want to, who is unsure of what they want to do with their property in the future. That's a consideration. Yeah.
So if a private citizen was to nominate a tree or grove, what, does that mean the city then will do that evaluation?
No. If a private
I'm just
citizen.
asking.
Good question, but
Yeah, not currently, Jerry. Right now, we would require an arborist report from somebody, and it's an open question as to where that comes from.
That's what we need to crack and skinny to college
Yeah.
folks.
So, in order to make it a complete application for review by the NRC and subsequently decision by the city commission. On public property, you've heard some willingness from the Parks and Rec Department to maybe fund one report for one tree per year. If there are other ways to fund it, great, and that sort of thing. So I think for now that we'll keep the discussion moving forward, and I think when we have a discussion with Rodney Walters, he might have some great ideas about alternatives to a certified arborist report, such as a checklist.
this is a function of my memory, I am sure.
Yeah.
The ordinance here that was signed off earlier last year, to what degree were involved in the discussion of the ordinance? The
The
natural resource-
NRC?
Yeah.
Very, very detailed discussions. I think we took it through a lot of revisions. There was a lot of public testimony on what ought to be included in the revisions, and that's what ultimately made it such a lengthy ordinance, because when you read it now, it reads a lot like a land use process. You have a completeness review, and then you have a timeline within which staff has to bring a recommendation before you. And then if an application isn't complete within a certain number of days, 180 days, it times out and stops. So that's good and bad. You know, it has aspects to it that it's not an automatic recommendation. You know, it
So,
has. Yeah.
so the trees that have been recommended by at the Oregon City Public Pool, that one's been timed out?
It has been timed out. Yeah, yeah. It's gone beyond 180 days, but can be resubmitted.
You mean time out? Went too long?
Yeah, you can submit them, but if there's not an arborist report, it becomes disvalued after 90 days. So
180 days.
180, so
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
so
Well, we need to figure out a way to deal with this. This is so.
that's why we haven't turned
I
in
know,
any
I'm
more.
glad you brought this to our attention. It just sounds like it's undermining the ability to.
Well, and that's what we have found. We've brought up several of them to the county, and the only thing that's holding them up is an arborist report. And even if they're on city property, you know, we talked about doing schools. But the arborist report is the biggest stumbling block, because we have several of them that have just, you know, basically timed out now. And each one takes a bit of work, but it's, you know, it's not astronomical work, but
But-
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just
it's,
a bit.
it's important to have a professional opinion about the health of the tree.
Yeah, you don't want to restrict or put a covenant on something and then have it fall down for in a year or something like that.
Right.
either, so.
Right.
Well, I would like, if I suggest, we very early next year, perhaps have the person from the community college come and speak to us. And to make sure we can keep that ball rolling.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and I've been in communication with them and also with the Parks Department and the Community Development Director about this process, so, yeah.
Yeah, I think at this point, I mean, if we can continue that discussion with the community college, and then, like I said, if you want to take that one step forward, that the Parks Foundation will be willing to pay for that one to get the ball rolling and see where it goes from there. I think that's a good step forward.
I think it doesn't hurt to have any place that has to submit, you know, on permits, like when you have to submit an arborist report on a tree to say, here, you know, fill out an application for a heritage tree. If they've got to protect it anyway, then it should be counted in our, we got to get some numbers on our trees. I mean, it's been pretty stagnant. In fact, it's going in reverse because one blew down. So, and if we can't even get another one up just because of the arborist reports, you can totally understand it.
Does anyone?
But if
Well,
we're getting
it may
arborist
be,
reports
to
on
be
trees.
fair, it may not just be the arborist report. It's
Yeah.
a disincentive for people. There may be other private factors.
Does anyone have a feeling what the annual cost would be in a budget? If there was a number, what the number would be cost per year? Would it be $50,000 a year?
I don't know.
Help people?
That's a big number, Jerry.
Huh?
That's a very large number. I don't know what it would be, but I mean.
Well, 25 or so out of Metro Enhancement is not,
Yeah.
that's very doable, since they doubled the percentage rate. You know,
Yeah, I mean.
if it would help solve this problem.
I don't know that any advisory committee can make submissions to the Metro Enhancement Board. I don't recall that happening before. But I think you can look for other bodies to do it. Natural Resource Committee got funding for design of the Scattering Creek program that the Public Works will be working on this coming year. And
Parks
the
Foundation.
foundation might
Yep.
be able to do it, and in some
Yep.
cases, maybe the Natural Resource Committee might be able to do it, but the funding still goes back into the city in some fashion. That is, we don't really implement the grant program itself. So if it's something that Public Works was willing to accept our doing that, and I think we have to have a department that's willing to do it, and I would like it, since we're under planning, I would like planning to be the entity that might be able to accept those funds.
Well, yeah. If we had a dedicated fund that my department administered, that'd That would be a much more expedient way to do this.
But if we get a
Yeah.
grant to get that thing started, you
Yeah.
know.
And yeah, so
Didn't,
if that's the priority for the NRC, then it should be placed at the top of your list for 2018. So-
I think everybody felt that the Heritage Tree was a
It's very
priority,
important.
so.
didn't David Frazier establish a $50,000 a year fund within your budget for planting trees?
He did.
Before he left?
Yeah, and that was now, I'm not in charge of the numbers, you know, I
Okay.
work in the planning department. So I don't know where that money has been transferred to now. I think it was transferred to the Parks and Recreation Department, but don't hold me to that, you know.
Didn't you not access those funds last year for Arbor Week?
No, we didn't.
No.
We used the tree mitigation fund that is, you know, $308 per tree, which is on the planning fee schedule. That's something that our department can administer as part of land use. So we do that with development review applications.
Do you remember the
Yeah.
the
amount?
nursery that I was asked to develop an idea for that I just brought all the planning to you and so forth, and then you were not allowed to proceed? That was the $50,000 allocation he made. He wanted to see something start happening annually. And it'd be nice to know if those funds are around someplace, because that would take care of this issue real quick.
Yeah, I can look into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was a former city manager, and we got a new city manager now.
Sure.
But, yeah, okay. I don't know the answer, but I can find out, yep.
Okay, we'll go on then. The planning commission memo has to do with the heritage tree, so we've already covered that topic. The NRC work plan update, which we have here. I'm going to make a suggestion on some of these pieces, and individual member or members of this committee or staff have been designated as the leads. And this is, the process on this, could you describe, Pete, what it exactly is? Are we going to be reporting back to the city commission on this?
Yeah, so there's been, December 6th is the first city commission meeting in December, and that's when the mayor and commission would like to hear on the activities of each of the boards and committees, what they've been doing annually. The way we did that last year was provided sort of a listing of all the agenda topics that you discussed over the year, and Doug presented that to the city commission in an abbreviated format. It's more conversational. We don't want to just kind of go through everything line by line. And then a copy of the work plan as part of the agenda and presentation, so that the city commission can review that. The other component to this is the city commission goals and priorities. So there have been some revisions to these, and so we need to make sure that our work plan coordinates with these, and I think to a large extent it's pretty up to date. So I'm happy to make some hand edits to these if folks want to update these, and then I'd just do this by hand and take notes as we go through it.
I'll go ahead and go one piece there. Like I stated, the Watershed Council has actually had signs made that should be going up. Public Works is going to be putting them up. And I would suggest the approach of that is that these monies were covered by grants that the natural resource, that the watershed took on. And so regarded it as a partner in this particular effort and when we talk about it. All the named streams here, with the exception of Tour Creek, Livesey Creek, and Thimble Creek, will have signs placed somewhere on those streams. And so we'll be able to report back on that. We got an indication some of those signs would be going up fairly quickly, and we'll be having a meeting on Tuesday of next week. One of the Public Works staff is, in fact, attends all our meetings, and he'll probably be reporting back in terms of when those are going up. Thought they were going to go up a little sooner than they're probably able to do, but Public Works is always running around and doing things, and being able to find that time is a bit challenging, I'm sure. So I'll report on that and go
Really
to
good.
one.
That's really good work getting that done.
Round of applause.
It's exciting.
It will have the natural resource, excuse me, the Watershed Council's logo, which are two lamprey, because all the other watershed councils have salmon. So we
Mix it up.
we mixed it up a bit. Number two responsibility here, where it looks like we had staff on those responsibilities. Ongoing projects under O3, involvement of Public Works Center Master Plan, on-site discussion on sewage and resource public works and city sites. I don't know how we respond to that. Because I don't think we've been directly involved in these things. So Pete, I don't know.
Yeah, so the Public Works Master Plan,
We wrote a letter of recommendation.
right, and it had been submitted as a land use application, but it timed out after being incomplete for 180 days. So at some point, they will resubmit that application. They need to do some additional analysis as far as geologic hazards and seismic stability for the buildings. And that's going to modify the application when they resubmit it.
I think there was also an issue that went before, before the LUBA, and in fact that it went through the Historic Review Board, and then there were some challenges by members of
Right.
the public, so there's some, is it an appeal process that they're having to go through? Or what is
That was, that was having to do with Camp Adair and the designation of two structures as historic buildings that required the city consent to the designation, and the city did not consent to the designation as the property owner. So the appeal process was not a land use appeal process, it was a civil appeal process
Okay.
outside of the land use process.
The
Yeah,
property owners have to agree to the designation of something on their property.
yeah.
And
Yeah. And so I don't know a great deal about all of that, but,
so I imagine that
Yeah.
delayed the process somewhat too.
pardon?
I imagine that delayed the process somewhat too.
Well, that delayed it as well, yeah, that whole thing.
This is amazing.
In any case, we did supply a letter of recommendation in support of the project, so we were involved in that. A few of us went out there,
Yeah.
and Jerry was there, and you were there, and
I think I was there.
you were there. Most of us were there.
Yeah, that was a good tour.
It was, I learned a lot that day too.
So we have made a contribution to that one. Promote community involvement with natural resource conservation. Assist with connectivity of the Rossman landfill site, interpretive center, Cove and Willamette River. Advocate for enhancement and maintenance of Metro South wetland as a gateway to Oregon City. Continue work with the Cove development of habitat restoration and pursue advanced projects under the Lower Harbor Trust Fund. So many of these things are
Ongoing.
in the process, at various stages in the process, and I don't know if we've been really that involved.
I can share a little bit with you. If if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. You're there named, so yes.
Okay, well, regarding the Metro South area, the wetland, Metro South wetland, I went for the planning commission and asked for consideration for a agenda item in the future to address a lot of things around that wetland area, including the 12 acres of built wetlands that Nancy Krishauer and staff made sure happened, as all ways to connect together some natural resource areas with the hotel effort that is still underway. It isn't dead by any means. And, but it's not dependent on the hotel either, this other effort. And then I sent to Pete, I ran across this plan we'd done at the city's request a long time ago for everything along Washington Street. A lot of that's gotten built. It's a design that the Environmental Learning Center, my group up there led. Anyway, that's the whole thing, is that the planning commission agreed we want to have an agenda item. And so I thought, you know, there's this neighborhood association that nobody thinks is real, the Two Rivers Neighborhood Association. Why don't we get them involved? And so we had a meeting 2 weeks ago. 21 people showed up for that meeting, a lot of business people and others. And we posed that idea, Brian Boyce, one of our former members here, that we get involved in that whole Washington Street linkage, connectivity, and all the possible ways to use those wetlands for the public's benefit. So you will see something coming forth that will come to us here too. But I first wanted to see if the planning commission, how they want to involve themselves. I don't know. You probably know more about that than I do. What was your take on that night?
On the Metro South idea?
Well, the whole business of having an agenda item to look at things along Washington Street and Metro South wetland.
I didn't get any clear direction from them as to as to put anything on the agenda, but I'll talk to Laura Turway about it.
Yeah. I think they wanted me to bring it.
More of a work session thing?
Yeah,
or
bring something to them, but I won't do it by myself. I'm going to do it with.
Because we were in the middle of a public hearing for the hotel at the time,
Yeah,
I think.
exactly.
And we were like, trying to concentrate on that. Yeah.
My desire is to bring Two Rivers Neighborhood Association, which represents that area, involvement into it, and maybe the end of the Oregon Trail too. It all works together. You want to have a natural history experience, and you're down at the EOT, end of the Oregon Trail.
Right.
You're there for 2 hours, and they've taken a bus down there. They want a 4-hour period of time with those kids typically. Take them on down to the Metro South wetland. Maybe in the future, if the other wetlands are connected somehow, you could have a real natural history day and cultural history day.
Yeah, so what the planning commission was approving was a phased development with a hotel across from the end of the Oregon Trail Center, and then a future phase for mixed-use development just slightly to the north of it, which will have to make improvements to the street frontage along there on Washington Street, and not as far up as Metro, but on the intersection of Abernathy Road and Washington, which is a very historic area. So there are some ideas from a conceptual design standpoint about the design of the corridor and the street improvements along there, and making those more like the bridge area that crosses Abernathy has got a different look than a typical street. Furniture is a little bit different and that sort of thing. So I think that's what they were discussing, and that's certainly within it's the type of corridor plan that would have to be adopted through the Planning Commission and City Commission, and it needs input from Public Works, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Just to clarify, Jerry, you were talking about the wetlands, and that's the Krishauer was involved in. There's an area there that I think had a permanent water feature on the opposite side of the tracks from the Metro facility. Is that what you're talking about?
Correct.
Okay.
But they're not exactly set up for public access. They were mitigation requirements to begin with, but they could be connected.
Right. So it's between the railroad track and the and Washington Street, and it doesn't.
It's beautiful.
It's not highly visible.
It's really come a long way.
But the establishment's been really
4 years
good.
old.
Part of it, when the Jug Handle project went forward, they had to get some cut and fill within the floodplain in order to build some of that facility, and that came out of that area off of the opposite side of the tracks from the metro facility.
Yeah, it's a 5-acre wetland and it has flood control as well, flood mitigation, so. There's an opportunity to use it as an educational resource, but there is some concern for liability, as there are with any public facility that involves water.
Yeah.
So designing it in such a way that it's safe for public viewing while not being a hazard for people
Huge
that
risk,
view
yeah.
is important. Yeah. Okay.
Well, the next is goal 4, and the one I'm responsible for, I've done virtually nothing on, but I know Dorothy has, communication with neighborhood associations,
Hey, Dorothy.
sit involved in the committee, and
Dorothy.
the business community. But I'm going to suggest, Dorothy, to whatever degree that this wants to be brought up, that we scratch out Neely there and put you. Is that all right? Because you've been doing it.
You're
You've done a great
perfectly
job.
fine. Leave Walter there.
I don't see my name.
No,
I'll put it in there.
You've done a really good job on that. You've been everywhere.
Okay, I made that change.
Connect Natural Resource Tour. Jerry, you have been doing that.
Yeah, I sent something out, I think, because I wasn't sure I was gonna get here on time, but here, coming down the pike is a summary and some pictures from one of the ones that Dorothy helped me with. The one that-
And I included your email and made
Yep,
copies.
same thing. Same thing, all I did was put some pictures on the top of when we did
Black
a
and white.
Port of Oregon City tour
That was a fun one.
in the middle of the rain.
It was, yeah. it was
We had
pouring
40
rain.
people showed up. It was good.
And no one left.
And nobody left.
Yeah, I heard good comments about it too.
It was pouring down rain.
So and I came to you folks, all of us, to help write a letter of support for funding. And I didn't get the funding. The funding went to uniforms in the elevator, and I want to know whether they're there yet on those people. Because if they aren't, I'm going to gripe. But one way or the other, it's okay. It's okay. We
The
decided.
uniforms have to go through a design review, Jerry. How long those things take?
Anyway, it's okay. We tested every one of these. McLaughlin Promenade, obviously there's a ton of history up there, some beautiful overlooks. But we took geology people with us and others, and Dorothy was a part of that. And I always included some union people to help with some interpretation. Waterworld Park, we know about the things that have been done there. Brian and I have done several programs on geology and natural history. The Port of Oregon City, this is really a chance to look at everything below the turn of 99, the Legacy Walk on down to 14th Street. And it included a walk through the downtown to look at some of the heritage buildings and up in the elevator too, to look for an overlook. These were all an hour and a half in planning. Clackamas Rapids in the Battle of Two Rivers was something we did at Clackamas Park to look at a vista there. And a miracle of miracles at the Two Rivers Neighborhood Association, here comes Wes, Water Environmental Services, to ask us about what we think about odor control in the West plant, which is pretty darn good, and some other improvements they'd like to make. And we had a chance to ask them, what do you think about your outfall in Clackamas Park? And they said, you know about that? Of course we do. It's a concrete platform. You know what I'm talking about if you've been down in Clackamas Park with a fence around it. It's perfectly positioned to give you a place to put signage in the future for the story of Clackamas Rapids, which is a very important story, the battle between the Clackamas and Willamette. And we asked them, would you be willing to participate with us in a project of signage? And they said, are you asking it as a condition? I said, no. We're asking to do it voluntarily. And they said, yes, they would be. That was 2 weeks ago. So there's a possibility for at Clackamas Park something really significant where the steamboat era stuff and all the things, the navigation problems of the two rivers coming together, the gravel bars, everything that made it very difficult could be discussed. And then the last one we didn't test, but I had it written out for an hour and a half. Clackamas, the story of the Clackamas River, a very powerful river. But so I'm offering, these things, all I asked people for at the end was donations to cover our expenses of printed materials. And it was fine. I love to do this. The people that helped me with this, Dorothy and others, and seem to enjoy it. And I'd like to involve others in this committee you know, both of you've got great expertise. You know how to talk real well. I've heard you talk.
And it gives us great opportunities.
Then we have this
to
forester
plug,
here.
you
We
know,
have this
to
great
plug
forester.
the
If we could
NRC.
put them under our banner, I'd be glad to do that. Doesn't bother me any. I would do the press on them, whatever's required, send it to the city for approval and, you know, because we got good turnout, everyone. Otherwise, I can just do them independently and certainly promote NRC as I did anyway. Now, we also promoted the
And
Parks Foundation. didn't we?
actually, it was an opportunity for several people to
Yeah.
give
Yeah.
little 5-minute
Yeah.
presentations to the people, and then we broke them up. Brian was able to
Yeah.
do a they really are. It's a good way to get a good plug in.
So I'm willing to head this up, but I don't want to do bus tours. Bus tours are too much work. Pete knows about that. The last bus tour we did, one of the former mayors got in a big fight with the developers because we went to Park Place Village. Oh my God. You know, to look at least the concept. And I thought, I don't need to get into a fight on board a bus. And
You could run into that problem in the walking tour too, Jerry. I mean,
walking tours, we can run away if something happens. So whatever you'd like to do, but I think this would be a good way to do some outreach for us, and we can pass out any literature you have about heritage trees or whatever you want to promote, you know?
okay. I don't, you know, we apparently don't have a great deal of time at this particular meeting, but these things that we're ticking off are things that perhaps, are you going to be making a presentation? We can be there, but
To the city commission,
yeah.
you have to make that, though.
Okay, I'll be happy to do it. What I'm going to do
But I
is-
will, you know, help you in any way I can as far as getting
What I'm
materials
going to
together.
do here on this piece, the next three coming up, have we advanced these at all? We don't have any other than staff. Well, we haven't had anybody,
Well, we've,
specific,
on the
except for the
street
last
trees, we've been routinely updating our website as far as providing reference materials and links to other organizations who provide tree care, such as Friends of Trees and others. So we are doing that. And then every year we do the Arbor Day celebration. This year we did it in coordination with the Parks Department at Wesley Lynn Park. So I think we're going to try to expand on the Parks Department's efforts to do that in terms of making it more Arbor Day focused than just Oregon City Enhancement Day focused. And,
well, let me
yeah.
come to that item on the prepare educational materials about street trees for distribution to the public. Have we advanced on this at all?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
very
yeah.
good.
You know who else you might want to work with, Peter, on that is the gentleman from the arborist program at CCC. He wrote a really great doctorate on city trees and canopy. He might be able to give us some really,
Doctorate?
yeah, I mean.
He's a
he did-
PhD?
I think so. I mean, I quoted it as this incredible paper, but or something.
Well, we can certainly link to that sort of thing. I mean, we do that through our How Do I website, where we've got like
Might have to,
subtopics and things like that.
5 good bullet points to put on there.
So any links that you guys want to send my way, I'll be happy to, you know, update our website and put them on our links. And then in terms of actual paper materials that we provide, you know, we typically don't put out in paper because of the resources it expends. Anybody can download things and print them out off our website. And that's sort of the focus. We do maintain the links to the Oregon State University horticulture program, so if people need descriptions of trees and that sort of thing, they can just click on those links on our street tree list, and it goes right to a picture of the tree and a description of what it's going to look like when it's full grown and the various seasons and what the twigs look like and all that stuff, which is already done, you know, at OSU. So yeah, that's ongoing. Let's see. Natural resources focused events, Arbor Day, Earth Day. That's sort of a yearly activity. We are coming up to reporting on the Tree City USA stuff, which we do at the end of every year as well. And that feeds into the following year's Arbor Day preparations. So Arbor Day Foundation, they prefer to know what you're going to do in the following year. They like to know what you did this year, but they also want to know what your plan is for public outreach in the following year. So we do that.
That's a good idea.
What date is that again?
That's a very good idea.
The City Commission?
Well, Oregon Arbor Week is the first.
No, I'm sorry, the presentation of the City Commission is on what date?
It's December 6th.
December 5th.
Wednesday, the first Wednesday in December is December 6th, according to this.
Okay, I'll be back. All right.
Or Trent could do it, potentially.
No, it'll be okay.
He's got it.
Yeah.
And all else fails.
You know.
Well, so do we vote on the chair and so forth this time too?
That's not on our agenda, is it?
Okay.
We normally do that after the first of the year, I thought.
Yeah, I think we do it at the beginning of the year. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we already voted you in for the next year, so.
I think when I make the presentation on the last item there, strengthen and encourage participants in the Heritage Tree Program, we'll point out the expenses that are associated with
Yeah.
that effort.
Good idea.
And say that we're going to be trying to find sources of revenue that can be, and I'd like you perhaps to check with Laura on this, that we would like to have funneled through the planning department for grant funds for people that wish to have that wish to have trees listed and enable them to be able to do that at less cost. And I'll go ahead and bring that up.
Okay.
So when we go, if we do go to the Metro Enhancement Committee, we won't get blasted by
Yeah.
anybody.
No, I hear you. I think maybe, and then designing the scope of that grant so that it's either going to be technical assistance on the front end for the designation, but it could also be technical or actual practical pruning assistance on the back end following a designation.
Yeah, to continue.
So continue
Keeping the
care.
health, the care.
Yeah.
The reason I say that is when the Watershed Council went, in fact, part of the grant monies going into the Scattering Creek design effort with Public Works was from the Metro Enhancement Company. Went before the city, before the board, and the mayor said, well, have you talked to us about this? And my answer was, we're not supposed to lobby you on grant submissions. So that kind of got dropped. But it's good for them to know ahead of time that we're looking at something.
Okay. All right. I wrote that in under the same column.
Okay. Goal 4, and goal 3 is listed here too. Seek opportunities to maintain communications with citizens and facilitate citizen participation.
Let's see.
This is kind of tied into, and I don't think we're going to have to go through each of these pieces, but Dorothy has been very much involved in that effort.
We were talking about the Arbor Day thing. I'm kind of wondering if maybe we should, I don't know what big activities we do for Arbor Day. I know Lake Oswego does a big hoo-ha about it, but maybe we could think about in 2019, starting an Arbor Day fair. And maybe the different Oregon City Parks Foundation, the PrAC, we can all be there and do something that would want to bring in kids and young families, like ivy pull basket, weaving, or stuffing scarecrows with plants or something. Do something that would really draw in families and kids.
I'm going to suggest that we come back to this fairly early next year, particularly looking for those things. The next budget year biennium won't start until a year after that, but we need to, I think enough ahead in that period. And most of us, our terms are going to be extending into that period. So we'll bring this back and put additions and so forth into it. For me, I'd like to go through this and find out exactly what we need to do in terms of the presentation to the
Yeah,
commission.
so what we've done for the last year or
Right.
two. And,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think where a lot of the Arbor Days, it's a one-day event with designed around a planting.
Yeah.
And there are opportunities to, before the planting event, there's some opportunity to do education. Doug has done this, you guys have done it. And make it more of a learning experience than just planting a tree. And that's a good goal, I think. And then once the trees are planted, people tend to disperse and go home, and maybe you can make it more of a celebration event with some, things that keep people hanging out,
Right.
refreshments and that sort of stuff. And
We
then
might be
can
able to
show-
reach out, depending where we're planting, but reach out to our Layrette folk, because
Pardon?
there are Layrette Park Committee.
Yep.
I really think there's an opportunity for a whole bunch of associations, downtown association, to come in and,
Word of caution there.
yeah.
Too many organizations, a
No.
lot of coordination.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay. That's just my
Right.
experience, is that the more people you get involved, the more it can, exponentially increase the amount of administration and coordination that needs to be
Yeah.
done. Not that it can't happen, but it has to be a lot of legwork for a lot of people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Calm me down, calm
What are
me
your
down.
plans for this year's Arbor?
What's that?
What are your plans for this year's Arbor Day? Do you have a
We don't
site?
have any plans yet. It'll be coordinated with John Waverly and Parks and Recreation this year. We want to get an early start on the public outreach. We don't want to start in March, we want to start in February. And choose a site, get our public outreach and schedule figured out ahead of time so that there's better, earlier publication about the event, and more, just as much emphasis on Arbor Day as there is on Oregon City Enhancement Day.
Yeah.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
that'll, like I said, will be good talk when we
Yeah.
come back after the
Yeah.
first year.
We did have a really high turnout of people at Wesleyan Park that day, and I think we had about 50 people with a bunch of kids out
Cool.
planting.
good.
And we
I'd sure
planted
like-
3 trees.
Sure like to encourage somebody, the process to look at Clackamas Park, because there's so many trees that had to be removed over time, and there's so many opportunities for the proper thing, whatever parks would like to be reestablished,
Yeah. So there's an opportunity to coordinate this with PrAC to a much higher degree than it has been in the past as well. And that way, 2 advisory committees are talking about Arbor Day, not just one. So, yeah.
Can I ask a question? Are people allowed to talk here? I'm here for class, but I wanted to offer something.
Yeah, come on,
The
Lori.
chair.
Is that how this works?
Yeah,
We have a public comment at the beginning, but you're welcome to come up.
I know,
you came a little bit late, but
That's
that's fine.
Okay.
I can
Yeah,
swipe.
we have to record everything we do.
We have to
here.
record all
This is-
public
This is a
comment.
public meeting.
And that's okay. You can
But
come
you
up.
can come up.
Bring you and your
All
whole
you-
family up. It's
Hold it
really
against
good.
it.
bring those two young ones.
That's right.
You got 2 of the best behaved kids I've ever seen.
Bring them up,
I'm strict.
bring them up.
bring 'em on
We'd like to meet them, bring them up.
Okay.
Yeah, the only thing, make a presentation, we do ask if you announce your name and whether or not you live in Oregon City.
Okay.
We want to know their names too.
And we want to know their names
Okay,
too.
but be on your behavior. You don't need to yell into the mic. Come up, please. Okay, you can say your name into the microphone. Don't yell, please.
You want to pull the microphone down a little bit for her? You just-
Larry.
And here,
Okay. You don't have to. I can say your names if you want, but come sit down.
I want to.
Okay, then say it in there.
okay, pull that down.
That's Huey. That
Again?
is Huey.
Who are you?
Omega.
I'm Erin.
Aaron,
I'm here for class. I go to PSU. I'm in a nonprofit, intro to nonprofit management
really?
class, and then some other ones for civic leadership. But I live in Oregon City for 7 years.
Uh-huh.
And I was just gonna make an offering because they go to Helen Gordon at my school and they're really involved with the school and community. And they have a community garden there. So I think that some schools do that. And I was thinking that that could be a good way to get parents and kids involved is by reaching out to the community schools you have here and asking them to create a project and then give them a designated time to have the project done. And then they could come to the event and share their ideas and like what their progress was. Because I think that children do better with learning when they're able to teach us too. So that was just my offering.
That's
Great idea.
Now, what school
That'd be
did you say?
wonderful.
I go to PSU.
No,
My
but-
children go to Helen Gordon at PSU. They're 4.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh, good. Give him an August,
All right.
It's the Helen
public
boarding
speaker.
school?
Helen Gordon.
Gordon.
Yeah. It's a child development center there. So
That's for me to make a
Emily
wish.
Reggio,
And he got his
like,
teeth pulled out at the dentist.
We've been quiet for so long, they gotta start talking.
sorry, I gave them that platform. But anyways, we were late because I'm a single mom.
Sure.
All the chores,
Oh,
and then I
that's-
Oh, sorry
forgot
we made you
my
sit
paper
there
I needed, so I had to drive
Well,
back
no,
home.
that was fine. I'm glad you came up.
Yes,
Yeah.
very much. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
In terms of, we've had a Girl Scout group here in Oregon City working with the Parks and Recreation Committee to do planning at one of our parks that has been neglected for some time.
Nice.
And they've really taken an active part on that.
Good.
Yeah.
I think just taking like the step to just ask, and people really are interested in doing it. And I've noticed that a lot of schools do have learning gardens now. Their school does too. I don't know so much about in Oregon City, but in Portland they do. And so, and we like they do a learning garden at school, and they have experiments that they get to do, and the school's involved in it. So it's like the collective part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, my son went to environmental middle school, and that was part of their curriculum, was that they had to be involved with the community and bring their neighborhood into their school.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Got
That's
it.
great.
Sorry.
I'm
Oh, no,
gonna,
nothing to apologize. That's great.
Right,
Thanks for
wonderful.
coming.
I'm gonna give you my contact information.
Okay.
And if you could, you need to fill out one of these comment forms, so I've got it for the record.
Okay.
And, all right.
I'm sorry.
Now, remember to go over to the thing, and they can watch themselves on television. If they can watch themselves on television.
Yeah, they-
And you can hold this over their head for all their life. Yeah.
I think, do I have to stay for the whole meeting because it's a class?
No, that's
Oh,
fine.
well, someone, I have to have someone sign.
Oh,
There you
happy.
go. And would you be interested in joining our Oregon City Parks Foundation? We're looking for nice young people with kids.
What do you do?
We work at doing ivy pools, plantings, we just did a Zersky,
Yeah, that's right.
planting long.
Super bashful, but then, man.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
we're looking for people
right
that
on.
are looking to help organize the stuff. And
Make over here.
My
it sounds
sister
like
works
if
for
we're
the-
just a brand new nonprofit, so yeah, we need
Okay.
help.
My sister works for the environmental center at Sylvania campus.
What's your name?
Oh, please do, no, really.
Wow.
I don't know what said our names.
Media, social,
Omega
Oh, yeah.
and Louie. And Omega.
something to
We
somebody
know.
Facebook page, on Instagram. So anyway, give me your name and number.
Okay.
We're having fun.
Follow
These
up
are fun projects people have
right on
planned.
the back of there.
We're having fun.
Very good.
And I'll stick this with our other, but yeah,
Omega.
we're looking
A
for some
B
nice
C D E
families
F
and
G
little babies. We
H
babies.
I K K L M N O E F
Okay.
I worked really hard to try to
Do
make.
you, cause I went to another meeting on Monday and they had notes. Is that just for y'all or is that something over there for?
Yeah, they have a little card. It's over there. You'll find the whole meeting agenda. Then plus a comment card. Grab both of those.
At the very beginning, we have citizen comments, at which point, no, that's all right. That's no problem. And in fact, I'm glad you stayed for a while as a result of that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you all for giving us space. You all.
Your name and city you live in, and
I love that. I can't wait to have some of those little voices around me.
Okay, last song.
This is her.
Okay, all done, please get down. It's time to go. We're all done.
Okay, perfect.
Say thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys were really, really good.
Yes.
And you're so smart.
Come on over here.
Very smart.
Very smart. Say thank you.
Welcome.
Push the chair in, please.
Have a good evening and be sure to have a good night's sleep for school tomorrow.
Right, there you go.
Come on, time to leave.
Eat a banana.
Thank you, Omega. Time to go. We're done on the mic.
See you,
You'll
Omega.
have another chance. Thank you. Being very good. Come on, Yui.
So that's going in the bylaws, is push your chair in, please.
I like it.
We did, coming,
Okay.
Metro 3 entitlement, I can say, see,
So where were we?
all those things, I'm not,
On go forward?
Yeah.
well, I'm looking at goal 3 again, under the top tier there, Metro Title 3 and Title 13. Enhancement, education, habitat improvement, consider natural resource annexation policy, consider tree protection. I think I spoke to the Planning Commission, and we actually made a report to the City Commission regarding issues dealing with the wetland inventory. We had that one stream that was identified by the, who is it? What Oregon Department? Department of
Department of State Lands.
State Lands.
Yeah, Department of State Lands delineating a stream, and it was not on our list, and the fact that we had to have a mechanism as these things come on that weren't identified earlier, that we're able to bring them more rapidly into the code system so that as development occurs, they can be dealt with, and we don't really have that mechanism at this time. Now, Laura Durway actually spoke before, I believe, the City Commission's mentioned, the Planning Commission, City Commission, but both I, as the chair here, and the chair of the Planning Commission, both addressed this as an issue that now needed to be dealt with to the City Commission. And I'm not sure if that follows in these lines or not, but I'll bring that up into the meeting as well.
Good, good.
Part of that, I think, comes into the next goal 4 down below, maintain and update a list of Natural Resource Committee priorities to share with the Planning Commission and City Commission. I'm going to provide updates and annual reports about NRC and our accomplishments. October, in advance of the City Commission retreat. Well, we'll be making this presentation not at the retreat, I guess, but at the December 5th meeting.
I just want to say that this NRC responsibility, number 4, related to that, conduct orderly meetings. I think you've done a really good job. I think this committee has done a good job. It's much more proactive versus reactive.
Yes.
And I feel like we've made a real transition.
Yeah. I might mention the fact that there were issues earlier on, but then this reestablished Natural Resource Committee, I think those issues have not been there.
Yeah, and I would like to reiterate, that a big part of that had to do with establishing a clear direction for the NRC through the bylaws amendment process that we went through.
That's true.
And the help that was given to us from the lady that facilitated that discussion. I think the important thing to bear in mind is that this is, like all advisory committees, a conduit for communication between the city and the residents that the city serves. It is very it's easy to become complacent as staff and not keep the communication going. And I think that was the danger that was what happened in the past.
You're looking for, what are you looking for?
Did I take a pen here?
My phone?
Oh, I saw it in your hand at one point. I remember you were carrying it with you in your hand when you're gathering the
I don't
kids
see it
aside
over
here.
here. Maybe the kids have it.
Do you want us to call you?
Smart.
Phone number.
Only way that works, that's the only way I can find anything.
Didn't come over here.
And the line of communication needs to be constantly maintained
Right.
in both directions.
Right.
And it needs to go as high as the city commission on a regular basis. And I believe that we've done a really good job as a committee in the last 3 years of keeping that line of communication open, because we've heard from the planning commission and city commission that they want to hear from the committee. So,
Great.
No worries.
thank you.
No, good.
Find it.
It slipped down inside the seat.
Oh,
Good for you. Good deal.
Yes, it's the phone number.
we did have a joint meeting with FRAC.
Yeah, and I
That's right.
think we did share with the planning commission, we had that one joint
Yes,
kind of
yes.
collaboration too.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that will show up on the list of items that I prepare for the December 6th update.
Schedule the meetings with planning commission, right? And economic development strategies involving Cove, Lower Harbor Trust. We kind of addressed that earlier, I think.
You know, I've got something I'd share with you about that, but if you want. You got a
No, I
second?
think it'd be great.
All right.
I'm going to suggest I'm going to be attending a wedding of one of my grandchildren in Hawaii at the end of this month, the beginning of next month. I'll be back in time. But I would suggest that I get together with Pete ahead of time and probably within the next 2 weeks, Pete, to go over
Okay.
this. If anybody else wants
I can come
to
too.
participate in that effort to kind of solidify what the presentation is going to be. We're not the only committee that's going to be addressing them, is that right?
No, there would be
So we're, so.
very short presentations.
5 or 10
5 minutes
minutes.
tops, yeah.
To 5 minutes tops, but we want to make sure to get the major points in.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll have a
We won't
packet
let,
of
we
information.
won't let either Dorothy or Jerry speak.
Because we're too long with But I'll come and stand,
5 minutes.
I'll come and stand in solidarity. But I knew that was coming.
But anybody that can make it, we'll just see what we can work out.
Sure.
We'll send an email out in the next couple of days.
Yeah, I should be around
Do you
on the
want to hear
6th.
about these economic opportunities? I've got a real simple handout I can pass out.
Yes.
Okay, it's coming down the pike here. And I asked, actually, our last meeting, that someone maybe attend the evolution of the, an inauguration of the River Assets and Opportunities Task Force. We met last Wednesday, 14 people. And I'd love to have somebody from this committee participate, because what we're doing is identifying all the areas along the river from the Arch Bridge down to the mouth of Clackamas and up the Clackamas into the Cove that have potential under economic development support of the Lower Harbor Trust Fund. John Runyon was there, and he was so happy. One, that he's working with Westland now and Gladstone, but happy that you invited him to help, that's what he said, with Greater Oregon City Watershed. Did you do that?
Say that one more time.
He was happy that he's working with the Greater Oregon City Watershed Task Force, your group,
Who's this again?
John Runyon.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yes.
All right, but the issue is, and I don't have a map here, this is a summary of what it is. I'm not doing anything by myself anymore. I decided we need power. I'm just one person, my organization. But the Oregon City Business Alliance is embracing this as a new committee, standing committee. And staff from Oregon City were there, John Lewis. Phil Lewis was invited too. I'd like to have somebody from this group, if they would consider, we're meeting quarterly, that's it, 4 times a year. In the meantime, did I see you put your hand up?
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
do that. Sounds cool.
Well, the deal is we're looking at places where projects can be implemented in the future, and it's really amazing on this list here somewhere, I just saw it here a minute ago, was the waterfront master plan. Guess what we found? The waterfront master plan of 2002 that was adopted by ordinance in the city of Oregon City, which had all these general parameters. It's not like you can't do this and you can't do that. Will you look at doing these efforts along your waterfront was the thrust of Walker and Macy. And we'd already been discussing a number of projects, and they all began to fit into 8 boxes that are in that waterfront master plan. I feel it was amazing. And so John Lewis said, well, we have to do this now because it's part of the waterfront master plan. And we said, good. I mean, there's some things that we could do without, perplexing anyone and proceed on some ideas. And so it includes some habitat enhancement along the river, includes maybe doing a lot of additional habitat work in Clackamas Park and looking seriously at the placement of the boat ramp in a way that will lessen the impact to the park. And things of that nature. A bunch of habitat work at Sportcraft and at the in the area around the giant pipe, I'm going to call it now, the big pipe project that was put in a long time ago. I'm talking about the huge culvert. So if anybody wants to be a part of this, the next meeting is February 7th, and it's 9:30 a.m. at River Shore Hotel dining area. That's where we're meeting.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, are you a daytime committee
Yep.
or a
Daytime.
evenings and weekends committee?
It's daytime, just
Okay.
because of the nature of the people. But we have Bill Monroe from the Oregonian wants to be on this because he's really concerned about the impact of sea lions and not trying to kill them, but we got to get some things considered. And then there's some people from Sportcraft that want to make major improvements to their operation that needs some help. Anyway, I feel like we've made and I'm a member of this group, but it'd be neat to have a standing member from someone here or any of you that would like to come, because it's a really powerful group. The Liz Moskagen, Liz Hamilton, head of the Northwest Sport Fishing Association, she came and said, I have lobbyists for you. We said, lobbyists that work in Washington, D.C. for my huge organization. We'll help with anything you need help with. I thought, wow. Anyway, it's kind of neat.
What time?
That's at 9:30 a.m. on February 7th, 4 times a year.
Okay, we'll arrange a meeting. The other members, when's the best time for us to do it?
Probably next week, because Thanksgiving's the following
That's
week.
true.
Yeah. Okay.
Or
I can't do Monday, but I could probably
what's up
do.
with like the last week of November?
Give me your email.
I guess there is the whole
Yeah,
last week, but are
like the
you
29th.
gone?
You read it.
Oh,
I'm in Yakima. I'm in Yakima on Wednesday, and then I'm taking off for Hawaii on Thursday.
Of the 29th?
Yeah. And so,
So you could,
so the next week would be better.
I
okay.
would probably say like Wednesday or Thursday or Friday or Tuesday. Actually, I could do Tuesday too next week.
And the purpose of this is just to prepare for this
Yes.
city commission presentation?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So when is it, this report goes to the city commission?
5th of December.
6th.
Great.
So
So
it's-
all of us should try to be there, right?
I think it'd be great to have a show of people there.
This is called the River Access Task Force.
Would you send us a reminder now that I'm looking at emails?
December 6th is the
December 5th or
Sixth.
December 5th?
Wednesday
I assume
evening,
it's 7 again.
Are you getting some of your,
7 o'clock.
Okay.
are you getting some of your side back?
I have a person that does all
Okay,
the work on my side.
With that, then we're going to go right ahead into communications. I have a specific thing to speak to, but let's just start back here. Mr. Kuehl, do you have anything?
Nothing today.
I haven't even been around, so no.
Okay. I did send a letter to Scott Burns.
Thank you.
Redrafted a little bit, the one that Jerry Herman had provided at the last meeting. Now, I sent it as a draft.
Sure.
I didn't want to get ahead of anybody, and
Sure.
I went ahead and copied the Public Works Director, Parks and Rec Director, Planning Director, the Mayor, and the City Manager. Because when we get involved in those things,
Yeah.
we want to make sure they're in the loop. Otherwise, it can, something might backfire on us at some point or another.
Good thinking.
I've not heard from Scott, but he is or was at least the chair of the International Association of Geologists and Engineers or something like that. And he's generally at Portland State in a given term, teaches to one class as a emeritus professor, but he is on the road a great deal.
Yeah, sure.
So I have not heard back.
Thank you for doing that. That was the right procedure. You're correct.
I just wanted to kind of tie that back in with the work program, because that really came out of the discussion at the prior meeting about Waterford Park being a tourism asset, realistically.
Yeah.
Rather than anything to do with land use or anything like that, as I understand it. And that's kind of a concern. So just wanted to make that clarification. And then also the letterhead didn't have the Natural Resources Committee.
No, it doesn't. It's still a draft, but if you could give me I looked at my letterhead.
I think what happened was, it got copied and something like came away from that.
So go ahead and get that to me.
Yeah, sure. Yep.
Would you send me a copy of it too, if you don't mind? No. That's good.
Are you going to use it?
Well,
I think we got to be cautious.
I'm not going to use it for anything. What I would do is keep it in the folder we have for Waterford Park, the Parks and Rec, or the Parks
I think it's
Foundation.
talking about just the letter, not the letterhead.
No, I'm not going to do anything with it.
No, he's talking about the letterhead, and the point is that anything that goes out of here needs to clear the commission first before we put it into to a letter under the letterhead. And I mean, that happened. That wasn't an issue.
Sure.
So I was a little reluctant to everybody getting a letterhead because the authority comes within the board itself.
Yeah.
That's correct.
You just have a copy of the letter, right?
Oh,
He's got a copy of the letter
Oh, okay, there you go.
that I sent.
oh, okay. Well, that's fine. I thought you were talking about something.
I emailed you. I think.
No, I've got it.
Yeah.
It was fine. Excellent.
And anything else for the good of our order?
I just want to give you a quick update on some things that are natural resources related. So the Tree City USA cycle is coming up, and I'll be preparing the application. If anybody want to look at the data that we're putting into that report every year, I'd be happy to send it out.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Since you are our tree subcommittee by bylaws, so your names are all part of the application. And just so you know, and then the 4 criteria for that are that we observe Arbor Day, we spend a minimum of $2 per capita per year on tree care and maintenance. We have a public tree ordinance and various other ordinances relating to trees, and we have a tree subcommittee or a committee that serves in that capacity. Those are the 4 criteria to be a Tree City USA, and so that's coming up. Equitable housing project is at the beginning stages. This is a project that is looking at revising the city code to provide greater opportunities for more types of housing and more affordable types of housing that fit in with existing neighborhoods. I'm the project manager for it, and we have a project advisory team of 15 people. We had our first meeting last month. It went really well. And the first work product that has come out of that is a code audit outline that looks at areas of the code that we could potentially reduce barriers in the code. So to more types of housing in the city. The Newell Creek Canyon Trailhead Plan from Metro is under review right now. We had a public comment period ended 2 weeks ago. We did get some comments from the neighborhood association that were generally supportive of the plan. I think Metro obviously wants to start work on that next year. So we'll get the land use approval
That went to the planning commission just recently, didn't it?
It's a type 2 review process on that. It
Okay.
doesn't require planning commission review because they're not proposing anything that's outside of the code. I don't see anything at this point that requires planning commission review.
Then does the city commission become involved in it at all?
At this point, no.
Okay.
It's a site plan and design review application for a parking lot and trails within the canyon. Some of the trails are considered exempt since they're narrow and natural. Other trails are not considered exempt because they're wider than 4 feet and have to have mitigation for that since they impact a vegetative corridor in some locations. But the overall thrust of the project is improvement of the resource that's out there and interpretation. And then the trail system, Metro's approach is very detailed and comprehensive and has an entirely much more detailed approach than what our minimum code standards require. So they have a long-term mitigation plan and maintenance plan for that entire area because they're going to maintain it in perpetuity. So there's that. Anyway, it's ongoing, going to be an exciting project. And finally, we're working with Friends of Trees on a 3-year contract to continue the neighborhood tree planting process, which is roughly in the ballpark of about 100 trees per year, where Friends of Trees does all of the outreach to the neighbors and tries to get as many neighbors involved in planting trees in the planter strips as possible. Building on the Barkley Hills neighborhood, McLaughlin neighborhood, and Rivercrest neighborhood, but we want to, over the next 3 years, expand out into other neighborhoods where there's other planting opportunities. And that's based on the successful plantings that we've done with Friends of Trees in the last 2 years. So that would be a contract for 3 years based on the tree mitigation funds that we have. Friends of Trees offers discounted trees at about $35 a tree for people who want to enroll in this. And the way they offset that cost is through a combination of things: grant funding, matches from the city, and other donors that they have in their foundation, so they can offer.
How much is that contract, if you don't mind?
Well, I'll be going before the city commission in 2 weeks' time.
Okay.
So it's going to be not to exceed, the city's match is not to exceed $30,000 per year.
Okay.
And that
That's
money
very
is coming
reasonable,
out
yeah.
of our tree mitigation.
I thought
fund.
for some reason that's where this 50,000 thing that David did was involved.
This is entirely separate.
Okay.
Yeah, it's based off the tree mitigation fund, which is a dedicated fund. Yeah. Our mitigation tree that's codified, or actually not codified, is 300. Our mitigation fee per tree that's removed from either a private development site or from a street tree is the same fund. It's $308 per tree, and the cost for Friends of Trees to purchase a 2-inch caliper tree is about $250 a tree. So there's some equity there. But we want to make sure that those funds are spent wisely and on the right program. So what Friends of Trees can do that the city can't do is all of the public outreach, all of the canvassing, all of the mailing, all of the volunteer training, all of the daily activity organizations, and then 2 years of follow-up where they check that tree, keep the tree bags filled with water in the summer months, and replace it if need be after 2 years. So that's nothing, the city can't do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
So I think it's money well spent. Thanks.
Could you do me a favor? Jerry brought up the funds that our previous city manager put forward.
Yeah.
Could you find out, could you track and see what
Where those
where
went.
it goes to and how it's
Yeah.
used?
Certainly, yeah. I'll get that down on my list here to contact.
Great.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Anything else for the good of the order?
I don't, do we still want to try to do this? I know the only reason I asked that is
yes.
because
Yeah, we gotta
I'm
do that.
actually
Yeah,
not
that's right.
going to
Let's
be
do
able to
that.
be at the December or the January meeting, so
Yeah, we
I'm
need
going to be out of
We
town.
want to do that.
So I guess the question is, do we want to have a December 13th meeting? Or do we want to,
I'm not gonna be able to make it,
Yeah.
so it's up to you guys.
because if not, we can go into January and it's up to the committee. You know, I'll be available.
I'll be here.
Yeah, I'm here and available.
Okay.
And,
December?
oh, December, yes,
December
so I'll
13th?
be okay in December. That'd be fine.
My suggestion, once I find our list of, I don't know what I did with it, actually.
What's that?
The candidates, I think we all have.
So I think it's just you and me tonight, cause Nancy's not here.
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman, is it normally, I know we normally look at each one individually, but we know all these candidates. And they've been very faithful about attending. You know, you've missed a lot of time, but I won't tell anybody. You missed very little time. I just thinking of a simplified way of doing this. I'd like to see them all forwarded.
well, I would, you can put a motion into that effect, I think. What I would suggest is to look at these and see if you have any questions. Take a moment to go through all these three. And then if you have any questions, we can go ahead and proceed. Given that there are no other candidates, it seems to me that if,
Oh, Doug, I would point out that we don't have to interview Nancy in order to make a recommendation.
that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
So if you have any questions of Nancy, then when do we report back onto this to the mayor?
Well, I would let Katie Riggs know if you've made a decision tonight, and then she would just let the mayor know
Okay.
via email or.
So do you have any questions of either myself or Trent based on our applications?
I find you both wonderful people.
I've actually,
No, that's not a question.
No, I have no question.
I do have a question for both of you.
Okay.
What do you see as the biggest priority of the NRC for the next 3 years?
Yeah, it's a good question.
And biggest objectives for the committee?
Well,
Good question.
yeah. I think we've got to find a mechanism of dealing with various invasive species through our system. There are many people that are involved in that effort, and we've already made a commitment to start working on this heritage tree program, which I think is extremely important. I think it's also critical to work with the various organizations that exist that have like-minded goals and so forth, and we have several of them in the city, and develop those relationships. And of course, I know several of us are members of some of those, and so the dialogue is fairly easy. But those are the things that I think are probably most important. Great opportunities, the partnership with Metro and our lands and the college as well. And I think we got to continue to build on those relationships.
Great.
You
stole them all?
But no, one of my biggest things is like I kept trying to bring, like I said, the communication amongst like just the committees and the public, or and the other government entities, and then at the same time communication amongst the communities or the committees themselves. Like our work with the planning committee earlier this year, and even the PRAC, I thought was excellent to bring some of those different perspectives together and kind of be able to drive that. As far as like priorities go, communication, leveraging some of those uses of other monies to try to enhance the heritage tree. Just try to kind of bring a more cohesive community together, so everybody's kind of understanding and not pointing fingers one way or another, stuff like that.
Great, thank you.
I was going to just make a comment that we're all in various groups, and like we have opportunities to speak at the end of the meeting, and some of those other groups too. And whenever one of the groups I'm involved is doing, if something in interest, I bring that up. And I think we need to do it to other groups as well. If you have end of meeting discussions like we do here, to actually put forward the fact that we're members of the Natural Resource Committee, and if there's certain things that are going forward that you want to bring to them that we're doing, to be sure to do that.
I just want to.
I have I've thought of a question. I'll make it real quick. Shaw Spady was really working hard on various aspects of this committee. Some of you knew her, some of you don't. One of her things we didn't include in this work plan, I didn't see it. I guess my question is the Dark Sky Initiative. We have some opportunities with some developments like Clackamas Cove and other big developments to encourage a test of that process. Would you think that's important?
For me, the dark sky thing, I'm still kind of getting in on. I've never really heard of it or been a part of it before.
Okay.
To me, it's interesting, and I want to learn more and more about it. And I don't think testing or having something like that, an issue like that, to in a control spot like that is a bad thing. It's always good to kind of side on the err on the side of caution, and if we do need to do stuff like that, let's do it.
Well, I think one of the things that triggered Shaw's interest there is that we do have an observatory on the college campus, and the lighting that was around it really interfered with being able to see those stars. I think we've improved on our public street lighting.
Yes, we have.
That we have. It
greatly.
is now directed downwards, and so that's improved. And I think Shaw Spady was instrumental in many ways of getting that to the forefront.
She was.
So these two items, the Dark Sky Initiative and the invasive species management, are not currently on our work plan.
Are they on the work plan?
No, they are not
No,
currently.
okay.
As I say, we're gonna come back at the earlier part of this year and start working on this for multiple reasons. One is that we may want to have the commission include certain things in the budget cycle, which will come in 1919, but to actually get those things well out there, including the Heritage Tree Program funding and those kinds of things.
I know it was a big one on Bill's list too, was the invasive species.
Right, and that's why I've added those as items under, for lack of a better place to put them, I'd put them under, second page under, initiate recommendations to comprehensive plan, codes, and policies. On goal 3, enhance livability of the community. Kind of underneath Metro Title 3 and 13, enhancement in education, adding support coordinated strategy for invasive species management and support dark sky lighting initiatives. Is that?
Yeah, and that'll
okay
be a topic for next year.
In 2018.
And the Cove is an example as it goes through now the plan review in the second, third, and fourth phases. We'll have an opportunity to bring that, whatever issues up to them. And
okay.
So, yeah. All right, thank you for responding.
Okay, somebody want to put forward a motion?
I move that we forward the 3 applicants with a recommendation for approval to the mayor.
I'll second that.
Good, motion made and seconded by people that weren't on the list, that's good. I
figured that would help.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good.
One second. I'm sorry. Okay.
Well, do we get to share a little bit what we've been doing in our community?
Yes.
Other than Jerry having really great tours, the Oregon City Parks Foundation has successfully weeded and put down cover mulch and did our first planting for the Ziersky demonstration garden, drought tolerant, mostly native plant garden. And the next planting will happen in spring. We'll have to do 2 more plantings.
Where are the?
It's right at the VFW.
Okay, yes.
Right, planting along the VFW at the bridge that's gonna walk over. And then we have 3 successful ivy pulls that have gone on in Waterboard Park. So we are developing quite a little resume. And we've all done this with very limited money.
And they've all been well attended.
They have.
It surprised me.
The last particular one, they've all had anywhere from 20 to 25 volunteers. We had 26 last time, and we ringed no less than 26 trees. we have official names on some of those little areas. We have the Jesse Bufivy Pool, the OCPF First Pool, and Daryl's Clearing, and now we have the Ringing of the Trees. So we're hoping to join forces and see if we can start to do like a Monday meeting for people that will, in our community, will just start to come and join other people and either ringing or pulling on Mondays, over and above organized pulls. Just see if we can get some people in there constantly in our park.
You should tell them
But you have to do it with a
about the
couple
grant.
people.
Tell them about the grant.
You tell them about the grant.
$20,000 grant that Ryan Boyce wrote with the other members of the committee.
But we need matching funds of like $8,000,
Which
so
he's now
we're working
pursuing.
on. We're working hard. We're
I
all,
think she's gonna get those from the Saltwater Conservation Service in their next year budget.
let's hope so.
And that will allow that project to meet its requirements for Metro enhancement approval. It's already approved for the final report. And
Speaking
Phil's
of,
been involved in that, met with the contractors that are trying to figure out how to get rid of the ivy without just hand pulling. Can't do that on the trees, you gotta do this work around the trees manually, but on the broader areas, it's amazing to look at the boulder field there now. If you begin to look into what's there, it really is scary.
Yeah, and those rocks are moving. And when you're pulling the ivy, all of a sudden you open up 2-foot gaps and holes that go down there.
Yeah.
I am, so, and you have to be very careful when you're stepping across in there. I've actually, because it's such a good climbing area, I'm starting to go over to climbing websites and announcing our ivy pools to them. So I'm trying to bring in outside people, because I just say, we can't handle those steep cliffs, you have the expertise in the ropes. And there's a lot of women climbing those, and I think, I know, Karen.
I just.
They're just trying to get people in. But, and not only that, but they're family oriented, and we need more families in our parks. We need more families and there's volunteers.
It's really neat to see the Parks Department really, I think, embracing it now. I think they thought this is way beyond what we want to deal with, but now they see momentum of the community, which I think is really good in the letter that Doug got forwarded. That's another good sign, so.
And
Yeah.
so
just by having so many people in the park, it's disrupting the settlements that have a tendency to move into there really quick.
Settlement?
Homeless settlements.
Oh,
So next meeting, we'll have two presentations. Rodney from Clackamas Community College, the arboriculture instructor, but we also have a presentation from Sam Leininger from Soil and Water Conservation District to talk about the Weedwise program, which is what Bill Clark was wanting to hear. So,
wonderful. Thanks for doing that.
Good.
yeah.
Sure would encourage that we hear from Rick Winterhalter sometime in the next 3 or 4 months about the recycling markets are collapsing everywhere right now. And we need to, I think, hear what the prospectus will be. How are you gonna deal with stuff that's picked up and buried
Yep.
instead of recovered, which is probably the reality, but.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the order?
It's okay.
Meeting's over.
Thanks for running the meeting.
All right.